to my lecture recital. The audience for my document, Unfachable, is specifically educators and performers trained or training in the Western classical vocal tradition, specifically in the United States. Its purpose is to give performers and teachers permission to exercise their creative artistic agency within the Western classical canon when programming, curating, and performing recitals. I approach this topic from my own positionality as a white cisgender heterosexual woman who has been trained in the practices of Western art singing. I am interested in how and why the standard solo vocal recital came to be, why it declined in popularity by the end of the 20th century, and how we can reconceptualize its purpose as 21st century performers and educators. I consider the construct of the Fox system and its potential limitations on singers' voices and bodies outside of the opera theater. I draw from what Cathy Berberian left us with her 1966 manifesto, The New Vocality, and some of Pierre Boulez's ideas about programming. I introduce my concept of questioning the museum exhibition tradition, include excerpts from my interview with soprano Julia Bullock, and finally, I build and perform a theatrical program with a narrative, incorporating my own poetry and using Kaija Saariaho's Lonh. I will show how in this program, time, genre, and space can be transcended using resources and tools like audio engineering, electronics, videography, dance, and visual art. My hope is that Unfachable can serve as an early 21st century manifesto to help singers curate personalized creative recital programs while also meeting academic requirements for a degree program. This program is dedicated in memoriam to the brilliant Finnish composer Kaija Saariaho, who we just lost last Friday at the age of 70. My document begins with an overview of several crucial elements of the solo recital, beginning with the mass production of pianos and printed sheet music as a result of the Industrial Revolution. During the Biedermeier period of post-Napoleonic Europe, this made individual songs and song cycles for voice and piano more widely accessible to upper and middle class spaces. In the 1830s, touring virtuoso instrumentalists like Franz Liszt and Clara Wieck Schumann played flashy music and variations on popular arias, but in the 1840s and 50s, Clara's repertoire changed, now including Mozart, Beethoven, Mendelssohn, and her husband, Robert Schumann. She sought to elevate and wean the public away from virtuosity for its own sake. In this way, the touring virtuoso performers of the 19th and early 20th centuries heavily shaped the standard of the concert song recital performance in Western art music traditions. Concertizing became a popular practice for famous opera singers in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. In their book, The Art of the Song Recital, Emmons and Sontag note, in its purest form, the song recital is truly a product of the 20th century. The practice of arranging songs in chronological order was pioneered by Marcella Sembrich, seen here. Artists like Elizabeth Schumann and Lotte Lehmann preferred to sing songs of Schubert, Schumann, and Brahms in place of arias, and American artists Mac Harrell and Marian Anderson continued this tradition. Cathy Berberian, about whom I will speak more later, reminds us that the solo vocal recital is an even newer tradition than the virtuoso instrumental recital of Liszt and Clara Wieck Schumann. The recitals, or soirees, of famous opera stars like Enrico Caruso gave them a vehicle to sing arias and songs, but included a symphonic movement and various flashy spectacles like dancing horses. When this tradition became an obsolete fossil, it morphed into the solo vocal recital of the days of Lotte Lehmann and Dietrich Fischer-Dieskau. People can come. Just please, just come on. I'm just talking, I'm not singing, you're allowed. Marcella Sembrich was a Polish virtuoso coloratura soprano who enjoyed an international operatic career. And upon retiring from opera, she continued a series of song recitals that became noted events in New York, lasting until 1917. She is one of the first singers of international repute to begin including folk songs on her recitals, a tradition that remains alive today. Her 1913 program, shown here, begins with Purcell continues somewhat chronologically through the 18th and 19th centuries, and ends with 2 Eastern European folk songs. As you can also see in this sample junior recital for soprano given by Carol Kimball in her book, Art Song, Linking Poetry and Music, it is clear that the standard chronological ordering of the composers, with the exception of a Brahms lead before one by Schubert, and general ordering of Italian, German, and then French, and last English is in place. This program is meant to be appropriate for a beginning collegiate voice student. The development of musicology as a discipline during the 19th and 20th centuries led to the musical hegemony of male Western classical European composers like Beethoven, Bach, Brahms, and Mozart. A corollary effect of this canon led to artist managers and committees pandering to the very best works by the very best performers. The old guard, used often interchangeably with the old order, refers to the mindsets of those in the opera industry carried over from the late 19th and turn of the 20th century. Emmons and Sondheim describe how rigid preservation of familiar repertoire by local concert organizations and managers who approve the content of each program would often override the vociferous protests of singers who were anxious to program music written before Bach and after Stravinsky. I appreciate that the standard recital format has merit to a singer who is still learning musicianship skills, growing into their voice, and honing what they desire to communicate with the world. Once we graduate from these institutions and move into advanced or professional level, we often still feel beholden to these restrictions when we curate our own programs. Students rarely, if ever, see recital examples that are alternatives to help whet their imagination. Fortunately, Joyce DiDonato's recital, Eden, stopped in Santa Barbara, so many young students have gotten the chance to see her program that also breaks the traditional chronological conventions of the recital, beginning with Ives and ending with Mahler, with a smattering of Baroque and classical repertoire in the middle. When displaying visual art, museums often tend to group pieces by style or chronological order, but I contend that they could, and sometimes do, easily mix style periods if they wove the pieces together using a narrative or a theme. In recital performance, a variety of time periods, languages, and styles woven together by a through narrative can be just as effective as separate sets organized chronologically. This is one way in which singers can transcend time. Both Marilyn Horne and the American composer Ned Rorem expressed anxiety in the late 20th century about the song recital becoming an ancient fossil of the past. And I've heard my colleagues observe that the recital is essentially non-existent now outside universities and conservatories. I argue that the song recital can still be resuscitated and doesn't need to hang on to the reputations of famous opera stars in order to survive. I agree with Emmons when she says, either the song recital must carve out a contemporary niche for itself, or it runs the risk of either disappearing from the professional concert stage, or at best, mutating into total elitism practiced only by European specialists. It should no longer be viewed as a snob occasion or a status evening, but in the words of the English novelist Henry Green, as a long intimacy between strangers. I argue that by incorporating multimedia, collaborating with other art forms, and greater versatility of genre, style, and compositional voices into our recitals, we can recapture the souls of modern 21st century audience members, especially in the decade of the 2020s, where much of the public is primed after the onset of a traumatic global pandemic to slow down, reflect upon the state of the world, take stock of how we really feel and what we really want, and be transported to another space or time to see other possibilities. The music director of the Ojai Music Festival in 2022 was the American Modern Opera Company led by Matthew O'Coin. With regards to the case of chronological programming, or the museum exhibition tradition that I mentioned a few slides ago, it's clear that they did not follow them at all. Frescobaldi of the early Baroque period followed the Celeste Oran world premiere, which started the program. And after some Vivaldi pieces, they programmed Philip Glass right before the intermission, and then John Cage opens the second half, followed by Nina Simone, and then Schubert, which are all considerable leaps of period style and genre. They seem to be following in the footsteps of Pierre Boulez, whose ideas of programming concerts thematically in the mid-20th century innovated the contemporary and modern music scenes for the better. To quote him, "Give them what they want," say the impresarios and managers of, for instance, the Metropolitan Opera and the New York Phil. "If what they want is an unending repetition of late 18th to late 19th century classics, they shall get them, especially if ticket sales keep up." A glance at recent repertory performed at the Met or Carnegie reveals an extraordinarily conservative policy of Austro-Germanic symphonies and sonatas and Italian operas, with a tiny hypocritical sprinkling of one of Elliott Carter and a few Shostakovich or Messiaen works thrown in. Boulez juxtaposed his own works with that of other 20th century works that are reactions to other attempts to render terror, sorrow, and awe, and they were held together in a way that illuminated the compositions and elaborated a context. This program by Boulez showcases the ability to transcend time and genre by consciously programming thematic contrasts, whether they be related to time period, space, emotion, culture, or belief system. As for the title of this dissertation, Unfachable, this word is a play on the German Fach system, which is used mostly in German opera houses to categorize and classify opera singers' voices according to weight, vocal color, range, character type, and comfortable tessitura. Examples of Fächer include subcategories of the 4 basic voice types: soprano, mezzo, tenor, and bass. For example, like dramatic baritone, or coloratura soprano, or spinto tenor. The system was developed in Germany for the use of ease of casting in repertory companies and in European fest contracts in which a singer is contracted for an entire season or series of productions. In many ways, this system protects singers by ensuring that their voices will be appropriately cast. However, it can constrain possibilities as well. Soprano Julia Bullock, for example, feels that this system can be limiting and even dehumanizing when extrapolated outside the confines of the main stage of the repertory opera theater. In our interview, she noted, "Most of the conductors I speak to or interviews I read say that we're missing the big stage personalities." And my response to that is, I think there are a lot of people who have tremendous gifts and skills but have been somehow coerced or forced into a system that doesn't give them any space to even express what they may not like about an existing production. It's so sad to me, and it's really obvious when you go to some performances and you see people who are clearly not able to bring their full selves into a piece. And honestly, it's because it was never fully invited in the first place. In their article, Ungendered Voice Types for a New Century, the trans non-binary writer and equity specialist Aidan Feldkamp suggests the possibility of categorizing voices and roles based on range, like 1 through 12, going from the lowest notes in the bass clef to the highest in the treble clef, pictured roughly here. Lyric ability versus flexibility, dramatic versus light, and timbre descriptions such as warm, steely, bright, etc. For example, the role of Queen of the Night in Mozart would be a flexible dramatic 12, and Don Giovanni in Mozart is a lyric 4. Each singer needs to categorize themselves, but for example, Lawrence Brownlee could be considered a warm, flexible, light 5 through 6, and Stephanie Blythe a warm, lyric, dramatic 8 through 10. And furthermore, if a singer's voice, like Stephanie Blythe, for example, has changed range category to include a much lower extension and now fits a role traditionally performed as a different gender, like the traditionally male Giannis Kiki, then she can be considered for the casting of this role, and she did perform it at San Diego Opera earlier this year. This system is potentially more free of the gendered assumptions of traditional voice types that adhere to the male-female gender binary, which not all humans and bodies fit neatly into. Feldkamp acknowledges that this system might also be prone to prejudice and unconscious bias, which we all carry, but they rather put this forth as a thought experiment. Now, many concerts take place in smaller halls or unconventional spaces like libraries or parking garages. The limiting feeling of fitting into boxes is something that modern singers can move away from when we focus on curating our own programs and creating literally our own performance space. In rooms, theaters, and halls, we can control aspects of the room to create acoustic effects, maybe amplification and electronics, or embracing the agency to unapologetically program song and concert repertoire where Fach doesn't matter because the orchestra factor has been removed. The assumption that certain Fachs only sing certain repertoire or composers or only play certain character types can be discarded in the recital. We must keep reminding ourselves that despite what the old guard and older generations of singers tell us, there is no one right way to have a career, and there is no one path to success in singing. Individual singers' concert programs look different because every singer's musical journey and imagination is different. In the section of their article entitled Think Outside the Box, Feldkamp writes, "Have you ever seen a goth Barbarina? How about a bisexual Tamino? If you can think outside the box about these characters, you can also think outside the box about the artists who play them. We don't need cookie-cutter opera singers, we need artists. But they'll only thrive and perform if they're hired to do so. Don't settle, instead, imagine." In the same programming vein as Boulez, American Armenian mezzo-soprano and 20th century music specialist Cathy Berberian says, pictured here, says that she always takes care to program an easy-to-take group on either side of a new or particularly difficult work, thus ensuring a just hearing for the composition by avoiding the tensions and defense mechanisms that could accumulate in an audience if the preceding works were also difficult. The New Vocality is the manifesto that was written in Italian in 1966, but was translated into English by author, researcher, and singer Francesca Plecanica. It was the first 20th century performance manifesto. It lends itself easily to mixing styles and genres in the same program because it was Berberian's philosophy that the best way to expose audiences to avant-garde works was to intersperse or pair it with more accessible repertoire. In The New Vocality, she reminds us that composers were performers and performers were composers before publishing companies existed, and before the written word became more legitimate than oral tradition in the Western world. What is the new vocality that feels so threatening to the old guard? Is it the voice which has an endless range of vocal styles at its disposal, embracing the history of music as well as aspects of sound itself? Unlike the instrument, which can be locked up and put away after use, the voice is something more than an instrument, precisely because it is inseparable from its interpreter. As a side note, it should go without saying that any use of the voice that hurts or fatigues the singer should be removed from the singer's performance toolkit for the longevity and necessity of maintenance of personal boundaries of their instrument. Berberian's manifesto advocates for an understanding of the past while living in the present with an aim of looking toward the future. In Plecanica's interpretation of the new vocality, she writes, Berberian regarded performance as an intense and creative act and invited modern singers to train towards a fully artistic experience on stage, incorporating dance, theater, and the visual arts in their performances. The new vocality includes like sobs, sighs, tongue snaps, screams, whispers, and laughter. It can include like jazz, musical theater, folk music, and these factors of versatility give birth to individuality. And she says, a tradition is always an artifact, and when it becomes no more than a legitimized fossil, look at the semi-deserted music halls, then it must make way for the new tradition. When Berberian struck up a friendship with 20th century composer John Cage, her ability to transition rapidly between different vocal styles became a private joke between them, which he turned into his piece he wrote for her called Aria. The singer has to choose between 10 vocal styles. In Cage's foreword of the score, written in Milan in 1958, noted for Cathy Berberian at the bottom, he writes, the vocal lines are drawn in black in one or more of 8 colors which represent different styles of singing. Berberian used dark blue for jazz, red for contralto, dotted line for Sprechstimme, and yellow for coloratura. The black squares are, here you can see, the black squares are any unmusical noise of the singer's choosing, like a foot stomp, tisk tisk, finger snaps, or barking like a dog. Graphic scores, like Caija's aria, allow for maximum creative agency when it gives singers the literal choice of style of singing 10 times over to accompany its corresponding color. I recommend conservatories and universities present all of their voice majors with this score or one similar to it before they graduate, if only as a creative exercise. My guess is that most singers trained in Western classical institutions would not know how to respond to the open invitation of this sudden license to their personal creativity. This is a creative muscle singers should learn to exercise, particularly how to exercise it within the essential bodily knowledge of their own physical limitations and boundaries. The pages look like a roller coaster of colors and words in Armenian, Russian, Italian, French, and English. Note the black squares for unmusical noises. Whether the words and lines are high or low are meant to suggest a comfortable top, middle, or bottom of the individual singer's range. This gives even more credence to the idea that no two performers from different voices would sound the same. This is Berberian's original 1958 recording with Fontana Mix, which is a background tape recording, and that would be the background electronic noises that you hear. This is just the first page of this score, and this is what I'm going to play. Soprano Claren McFadden's recording of the same page. At the very least, this piece can teach students their stylistic preferences and comfort levels they default to, which can in turn be a potential opportunity for growth. Caija's aria also highlights the topic of compositions for unaccompanied voice and the potential for all voices within this unexplored body of work. In your list of resources on your programs, you can find a website that lists compositions for each voice type, or even for all voices. While not accompanied, Kaija Saariaho's Lonh, composed in 1996, is for soprano and electronic accompaniment, and includes many similar elements of the new vocality that Berberian, Berio, and Cage forged in the mid-20th century. Lonh is the piece around which I build my program. I use Lonh as a centerpiece, creating an emotional narrative of a story of unrequited love through my program, incorporating dance, my own poetry, projected video, and visual art. Finnish composer Kaija Saariaho was a highly sensitive child. Because she was often ill, she spent a deal of time indoors, loving the delicate patterns the sunlight made on her bedroom floor. She loved taking walks in the woods after the rain near her home in Finland, and she was influenced by the soundscape of this atmosphere in her future compositions. The earth damp after the rain, bird calls, the wind, the rain, where the forest was like a great echoing hall. She grew up with the male composer John Sibelius as the quintessential model of a Finnish composer. So because of his masculine image with a pipe, she felt that since she didn't fit this mold, she could never be a composer. This is an example of how the traditional patriarchal hegemony of Western classical music initially discouraged a young musician with a marginalized identity, in this case, a woman, from following her voice. She was trained in the Central European avant-garde traditions, serialism and post-tonal 20th century techniques. But she felt the most at home in the influence of the spectral composers Gérard Clézet and Tristan Murail. She was greatly influenced by Messiaen, particularly his use of bird calls in his compositions. Knowing her love of patterns of sunlight, sounds of sea, and sounds of nature, it seems natural that she would find calm, peace, and a sense of home with this sound universe. The soprano Dawn Upshaw described Saariaho's music as living in sound and harmony, rather than thinking of her melodies horizontally. And this can be a meditative way to transcend time and space. She loved creating harmony and structure by means of using analyzed sound phenomena, which comes from the spectralism world, whereas her use of concrete, natural, or electronically modified sounds like whispers and birdsong comes from the tradition of musique concrète. There is nothing robotic about the electronically created soundscape you will hear. It feels human and natural, and it breathes easily with the singer. Here's an image of the notes in the foreword of the Lonh, on the left. If we compare and contrast those on the right of Luciano Berio and Berberian's Sequenza 3, we see many similarities. Saariaho and Berberian were both attracted to the wide expressive potential of the human voice that the new vocality championed. Saariaho wanted to create an atmospheric space where intimacy could be reverberated throughout, so she employs a great deal of whispering and various degrees of whispered and sung combinations as well, and that's what those note heads specify. The diatonic D Dorian modal soprano line sounds medieval in the context of the electronic sounds surrounding voice. She plays with the juxtaposition of the medieval and the 20th century. At the same time, the modal melody of the soprano line requires the vocal sounds and colors that modern 21st century soprano needs, trilling, full vibrato, and at times full operatic singing. The soprano line sounds almost improvisatory at times with the extreme vocal and tonal flexibility it requires. In this image, you see that Saariaho used the same modal scale and melodic contour on the left of the traditional troubadour melody on the right. SUNY professor Judy Lockhead said, using digital technologies as a tool to enact a sonic design of radiance, Saariaho projects a pre-modern sense of longing, as might have befit Geoffrey in the 12th century, but a Geoffrey embodied in the present through the female voice. Geoffrey Rudel was the troubadour in the 12th century who originally wrote this poem and that original modal composition. Saariaho found Geoffrey Rudel's life story, the Vida, in the Paris library. He was a 12th century medieval troubadour in Provençal, France. He spoke Occitan, which is a dialect of French somewhere between modern French and Spanish. Lonh, which means love from afar in Occitan, is Rudel's original composition. She excerpted sections of it and made the format a total of 9 sections, a prologue, 7 middle sections, and an ending tornata. The following shows the text of sections 1 through 4. The text that is sung or spoken live by the soprano in performance is bolded. If the text is recited in the recorded fixed media track, it's italicized. And if the text is light gray, she doesn't use it at all in her composition. You will hear the voices speaking and whispering these words in the electronics. The prologue is the singer's choice to recite the text in either Occitan or English. Don Upshaw, in the original recording, chose her native language, English, and I've chosen the same. Lonh is the blueprint for Saariaho's opera L'amour de loin, which received its world premiere at the Salzburg Festival in the year 2000. One concept that keeps recurring in discussions of Lonh and Saariaho's compositions is the idea of space. She wanted to move away from composing with pre-recorded tape because she felt it didn't give the singer enough space to breathe. One of the challenges for the singer in singing this piece is that the accompaniment consists of sampled sounds that need to be downloaded onto a laptop or tablet, and then the singer either needs to use a foot pedal to control when the accompaniment moves to the next section, or a sound engineer needs to control the laptop to move to the next section. These cues, there are 9 in Lonh, are essential to the performance of this piece and what differentiates it from singing with a tape recording. This does give the singer more breathing and vocal flexibility in the performance for creative license. I'm choosing to hire a sound engineer, Raphael, to control not only the timing of the cues, but also the levels of the microphone and sound, so that these are 2 less things that occupy my mind while I perform. This is one way in which Saariaho is concerned with space. She wants to give the singer enough musical time to breathe between sections. She avoids using too much rhythmic material in order to keep the electronics as flexible as possible. With regard to the physical space of a room, hall, or theater itself, specified in the forward of the score, the singer needs a microphone and speakers, which we have 2 in the back and 2 up front. Saariaho's goal was for the singer to create their own atmospheric sound space. The purpose of the microphone in this case is for us to have control over the effect of the whispering being understood. So when the mic volume is turned up high, really high, that's for the whispering, and for the eerie effect of the infinite reverb, regardless of the size or acoustic of the physical space one is performing in. This is especially useful on a performance tour where the venues are constantly changing with every new tour location. The electronic accompaniment includes sampled sounds that run the gamut from nature to percussion, wind, sea, rain, bird calls, chimes, cymbals, wood, mallets, a bass drum, a gong, and vocal whispers and utterances in French, English, and Occitan. The accompaniment both supports the singer and responds to the main vocal melody. And if the acoustics of the physical space cannot be depended on to naturally amplify this universe of nature and percussion sounds that are sometimes soft and muted, the microphones and speakers serve the purpose of the singer creating their own space. This has nothing to do with the size of the singer's instrument or if their voice is loud enough. Concerns of sound volume in any space can be addressed by the sound engineer if there is amplification involved, especially when the infinite reverb required on the soprano line is a haunting otherworldly effect on the high notes that suspends time. Lonh evokes the space of outdoor areas in which one sits, undisturbed by civilization, for undetermined periods of time. Oftentimes, both as the performer and the audience, we feel like there is no linear concept of time. In blending the medieval sensibilities of the vocal line and the 20th century sensibilities of the electronic part, time between the 12th century and the 1900s is transcended. I have built my recital program for today around a through narrative of a lifetime of unrequited love, from the jaunty, silly, and hopeful stages of its infancy all the way to its bitter end. I'm beginning with the light-hearted, innocent, almost theatrical text of Gabriel Kahane's You Look Sexy from his 2006 recital, Craigslist Leader. I'm including in the standard lead, Johannes Brahms' Botschaft, which is typically sung by lower voices. Another example if a piece is transposed to fit a singer's range, there is no reason it needs to be relegated to a specific Fach. Rosephanye Powell is mostly known for her choral music compositions, but her song, I Want to Die While You Love Me, from her cycle Miss Wheatley's Garden, should sit squarely in the song repertoire for lyric voices. Living composer Reena Esmail expertly blends both Eastern and Western classical music elements together in her music, particularly the gorgeous love song Rosa de Sal, in which Pablo Neruda's Sonnet 17 is juxtaposed against the Hindustani classical rag or scale, Puriya Danishri. Lena McLin has written art songs in addition to her many spirituals that are criminally unknown. I will sing her haunting song, Silence, from Songs of Love. And last, even though I might not play the role of Desiree Arnfeld, an aging, mature woman looking back on her life in Sondheim's A Little Night Music, now in my 30s, I feel an emotional connection to the lyrics and music of Send in the Clowns. Plus, I've changed the key from the original to one that suits the range of my voice right now. I've interspersed well-known repertoire into a program with many others that are virtually unknown to the general public, giving them life and breath, as Boulez and Berberian both recommended. It showcases my individual versatility and eclectic taste that includes music, modes, and concepts from the 13th century to the 21st century, across continents with a variety of compositional voices. The elements of unfachability that this meets, I challenge the museum exhibition tradition. I transcend time by juxtaposing the 12th and 20th centuries. The electronics, transcending space, transcending genre, composers with differing intersectional identities naturally leads to a variety of languages, styles, and influences. And the juxtaposition of the Hindustani rag with the Western classical singing technique. And I'm incorporating a dancer in Lonh and the creative agency of my own personal individual narrative throughout. And I will also read one of my own pieces of poetry. So now we will begin the recital program proper. Please, I ask that you hold your applause for effect after the third song, and also after the Lena McLin, right before the last number. Those are the two places where I request that applause be held. But otherwise, please enjoy. Seizure.
How many lifetimes have we spent together, but you don't even recognize me in this one? How many times have I screamed out into the night air, hoping no one can hear me but you and the ocean? As every year goes by and my face looks different in the mirror, would you even notice? Would you even recognize me from the day we first met?
When the days are long in May, I like the sweet song of birds from afar. And when I have gone away from there, they bring to mind a love from afar. I go bent and bold with desire, so that neither song nor hawthorn flower pleases me more than frozen green. And all the only men I've ever always wanted are at their homes with their wives and girlfriends, cuddling cats, making pasta, fixing cabinets, slow dancing into bed, and I'm here at the beach at 8:32 p.m., cold, hungry, and thirsty, staring into the space between the mist and the universe. Sandy wind whipping numb salt on my face. I'll be wasting my time so I don't waste theirs. Spinning my time, wasting my wheels, rocking back and forth in the chilly night air. Thought about sandcastles, but I just can't care. Waiting for my numb face to become my numb heart so I can forget about them, how they forgot about me. And maybe it's that I'm so easy to forget. And maybe it's that I can finally take myself home. Tis better to sit beside the sea, here on a spring-kissed beach, in silence, in silence. But between such friends as we is full of deepest speech. Isn't it rich? Are we a pair? Me here at last on the ground, you in midair. Sending clouds. Isn't it bliss? Don't you approve? One who keeps tearing around, one who can't move. Where are the clowns? Send in the clowns. Just when I stopped opening doors, finally knowing the one that I wanted was yours, making my entrance again with my usual flair, sure of my lies. No one is there. Don't you love farce? My fault, I thought that you'd want what I want. Sorry, my dear. And where are clowns? Quick, send in clowns. Don't bother. They're here. Losing my time in this late in my career. Where are the clouds? There ought to be clouds. Maybe next year. Not that much more, though. I swear, not that much more. We're almost done. In my program notes, I included several resources for recital programming, sort of near the end. I know there's a lot in there. In addition to 2 sample programs that include Lonh. One includes a through narrative of a love story, beginning with Lonh and ending with Schumann's Dichterliebe. 2 separate singers and 2 dancers could be used to tell this story. The other is a theme recital based on the concepts from John Koenig's best-selling book, The Dictionary of Obscure Sorrows, that assigns real and made-up words to humankind's strangest, most obscure feelings. What is the benefit of curating versatile recital programs? How does transcending genre, space, and time benefit our performances? Artistic and intellectual curiosity to juxtapose different styles and genres, giving them commonality through an emotional narrative, not keeping them apart like a museum exhibition. Respect for a variety of compositional voices, languages, and identities that differ from one another, which guards against the hegemony of male European composers. These factors create a multitude of perspectives that allow for exciting contrast in performance. From my interview with Julia Bullock, I asked her specifically, directly, if artists have a responsibility to program composers with differing intersectional, racial, and gender identities, and this was her response. I think for me, being an artist is being in a constant state of curiosity, and a lot of the music I find, it's not because it's been tossed in my path, I've gone searching for it. I guess it's a cultural choice, but particularly for American artists, we're living in a country where there's such a breadth of experience and heritage in our land. And you can certainly live in a bubble, but how cool if you can open your landscape and put in some time listening and looking. I'm grateful to some critics and music writers who have put together lists like best composers of the last 50 years, or a list of women or Black composers. There's always someone on those lists whose music I don't know. I guess it is a responsibility if you identify as an artist. It's about asking, how do I identify as a musician? It's about collaboration and communication. It's about educating and engaging yourself and those who are witnessing what you offer. I will end with this quote from our interview. I think schools could start teaching students how to start researching and also how to start programming in ways that excite them. That it's not just about fulfilling requirements for a jury or something, but you can fulfill your requirements and still entertain yourself and provide a tremendous experience for your audience if you want to curate and comprehensively think about the experience for people who are coming to hear the music. I will leave us with the invitation to keep questioning traditions, social constructs, and musical constructs like the Fox system, and where they could be limiting the full potential of our individual creative agency and our fullest ways of being. My hope is that Unfachable is only the beginning, that it serves as a catalyst for more discussions moving forward in the 21st century, and that future students and teachers will continue to expound on the ideas I've gathered. Thank you so much, and again, for coming, and please join us for a dessert reception in the courtyard.